This is episode number 44 of the InfatuAsian podcast. This is Curtis, and on today's episode, we'll be wrapping up our summer book club by chatting with Cecily Wong, author of the novel Kaleidoscope. You know, I've had so much fun speaking with these authors, starting with Weike Wang in June when we talked about Jonah's Okay, and then speaking with San Francisco-based author Kirsten Chen about her novel Counterfeit. And now we're going to be speaking with Cecily Wong about Kaleidoscope. These young authors are so fun to talk with, witty, smart, talented. The only downside with doing these podcasts on books is that not all of you have read these novels. So I really hope we've inspired you to head to the library or maybe the bookstore and get your hands on one of these books. You really would be doing yourself a big favor. These are great books. So I hope you enjoy our chat with Cecily. Thanks again for listening. Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the podcast. We hope you're all doing great out there. We have another summer book for you. I guess, Emily, this is our thing. We're going to do books in the summer. I feel bad. I feel like I've given you homework to do.
No, I definitely don't mind, especially with this book. It took me to different parts that I've never been before.
Yeah. This book is cool. This book is unexpected. I had no idea what it was about.
Same.
So the story goes, we were trying to get a hold of this one author, and she's been super busy. And so I contacted her publicist, and she said, "Oh, she's really busy. I'm not sure when she'll do it." And then she emailed me out of the blue, and she said, "But I have another author who's coming out with a book in July. Her name is Cecily Wong, and we'll send you a copy of the book." And I was like, "Oh, I can't say no," right? So they sent me a copy of the book, and I was, but after I said, yeah, I was kind of nervous that I wouldn't like the book because I didn't know anything about it. So I started reading it, and it just sucks you in. It takes you around the world, and inside of this Chinese American family, this Chinese woman, a woman that's Chinese, and her husband is Caucasian, so he has two daughters that are Hapan. It takes them around the world. Fascinating read. I like one of the more interesting books I read this summer.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Not predictable at all. Well, I didn't think so.
Mm-hmm. And the characters were just super interesting.
Yeah.
Surprising too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. So we're going to talk to Cecily. What have you been up to? You been up to anything good?
No, just working. Yeah. It's kind of my busy season right now.
Yeah. Well, I just started back. So school's starting up again. So we just started back. So no more time for reading. So I don't think there will be a fall book club. But yeah, maybe every summer we'll do 3 books. We'll do a June, July, August pick. I don't know. What do you think? Yeah. You think Asian book podcast is a thing?
I think so. Yeah. Love it.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we're definitely introducing people to some of these books that my wife had never heard of Counterfeit, but she loved it. So I think it's good.
I've been recommending that book to all my friends because it's such a fun read.
It's such a fun read. It's a different read. I recommend both. Obviously we've enjoyed all these books, but yeah, it's very different books, but both Asian authors, both up and comers, so it's an exciting time for Asian authors, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Every month, something new. So who knows? We may do a fall book club, but I don't know if I have time to do all the reading.
Maybe not every month. Maybe one fall book.
Yeah, I know. I've been saying, Emily, so how you doing? We have to record on Thursday. You're like, I'm still reading. But yeah. All right, so let's get into it. Thanks for coming along again, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. And let's introduce our special guest today. Coming from Portland, Oregon, we have Cecily Wong. Hey, Cecily.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. What's good in What's good in Portland right now?
Everything's pretty good right now. August is a good month in Portland. It's been hot everywhere.
Yeah.
But we're getting a break from the 95 degrees.
Yeah. You know what? I think Portland kind of underrated food city. Would you agree with that?
I actually feel like I totally agree that Portland has amazing food. It punches way above its weight in terms of population and size. But I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm just in a certain circle, but I feel like it gets a lot of love for its food.
People know. Yeah, maybe I'm in the wrong circle. But yeah, no, but great seafood. We had some amazing tomatoes when we went there. Food trucks, you guys have had food trucks for years. Food truck scene is relatively new, but I went there like maybe 15 years ago and you already had a good food truck scene.
Oh yeah. No, I've only been here actually for 2 years. But since I've been here, some of like my favorite food trucks have already become brick and mortars. Like it's this kind of like incubator for food ideas, and then they take off, and it's really cool.
Yeah. All right. So we're talking to Cecily Wong. Cecily Wong, we're going to talk about her third book, which is called Kaleidoscope. And your first novel was called Diamond Head. And I haven't read it yet, but it sounds interesting. So I think I'm definitely going to put it on my list. Came out in 2015. It was recognized by Elle and got its Reader's Prize. It was voted Best Debut at the Brooklyn Book Festival. And it's a multi-generational saga that starts in China and ends up in Hawaii.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. This was kind of my first foray into feeling out how to write fiction. I didn't really go to school for it. I started taking a writing class when I was an undergraduate at Barnard, and I didn't think I was going to become a writer. And I just got kind of stuck on this story, and it became a way for me to kind of connect with my Chinese Hawaiian roots. I grew up in Oregon, really far away from the rest of my family. And so I started writing this story about essentially my mother. It ended up getting very far away from that, but just this young girl growing up in Hawaii in the 60s. And that kind of morphed into this project that grew far outside of my control, and I just chased it for many years until I had a book.
Yeah, it's a process. Yeah, you have this idea, but then from that until publishing it is a good 3, 4, 5 years. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I always say that like if anyone knew how long this took and like how many times you have to rewrite it and just all the perils of publishing, no one would ever do it. So it's good. I think that on the front side, you don't know all this.
And then your second book, a little departure. You're going into a little more nonfiction, and it is a big book, like literally 448 pages. It is Gastro Obscura, a food adventurer's guide, and it's put out by the folks, I think most people know the name Atlas Obscura, and they do these books with kind of fun, weird facts from around the world. But this is a food book. How did you get involved with this? Do you have a culinary background at all, or? So
I don't have a technical or formal culinary background, but I grew up in a restaurant family. My parents owned restaurants my whole life. So I grew up in the kitchen. So I've always been like hugely enthusiastic about food. And I saw this job posting actually on the internet. I'm a person from the internet. Okay, yeah. I applied for this job, and they're like a really cool company. They're always taking chances, and like they have a very, specific point of view about what they wanted to do with this book. And they wanted to do really like narrative storytelling about food and food cultures and these kind of bite-sized entries. And so I sold myself, I guess, and they gave me the job. It was a heavy lift. We worked on that book for like 4 years.
Cool. So that was definitely different from your first book. And then you pivot back to fiction with this book. What made you kind of want to do something? Did you just want to do something different, or was this story something that you had rattling around in your brain for a while with Kaleidoscope?
Yeah. So the Gastro Obscura book was actually kind of more of the departure for me. I went to an office for that job. I went into the Atlas Obscura office 3 days a week, and had coworkers and a desk, and that was like a huge departure from me, like writing novels, in my bed. Yeah. And so while I was working on that book, I was simultaneously working on Kaleidoscope
at the same time. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that was actually a great setup. In retrospect, I would work on Kaleidoscope on Mondays and Fridays, and then I'd go into the office and work on Gastro Obscura on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it was a nice little setup. It made me kind of, always want to get to the other project.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you. We like to talk about our guests. Where were you born and raised?
So I was born in Honolulu in Hawaii, and I moved to Oregon with my family when I was 7, and I grew up in Eugene,
Okay,
Oregon,
so there
which
is that
is
Eugene connection.
there is that Eugene connection. Yeah. So Kaleidoscope opens in Eugene. And it was, it was a really nice childhood, but it was like extremely white.
Hmm.
And so I grew up, with a lot of lingering questions about my Asianness and my Chinese Hawaiian heritage, which is what led to my first novel.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but I still have, yeah, I mean, I'm back in Oregon. This is a great state. I love it here.
Yeah, no, I've been there, and University of Oregon is there, and so there's a little diversity on the campus. But yeah, when you get into town, it's
Yeah. And especially, I think it's a little different now, but 25, 30 years ago,
Mhm.
it was like it was a little different. It was, I was like one of 3 Asian kids like in my like second grade class.
Yeah, I can imagine going from Honolulu, where you're like 90% Asian, and you go to Eugene. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a
Exactly.
little
It's
culture
a little
shock.
alarming.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but then you end up going to New York. What? So this is part of the book as well. Not that saying that you're Riley or anything, but you end up traveling across country. What drew you to Barnard?
I was desperate to go to New York. I don't know. I just had it in my head that I needed to get to the biggest city I could.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I was like so obsessed with it. In fact, that I was voted in high school my senior year most likely to go to New York.
So you were talking about it with your friends.
Oh
You're like,
yeah,
you should walk around with your NYU shirts on.
exactly. I was like, this is happening, no matter what. And so yeah, that was the goal. I wanted to just get to New York.
Uh-huh.
And I'd actually never been to Barnard, but they offered me the most financial aid, and they offered me just a way to get to New York. And so on move-in day, that was the first day I saw the campus. That was the first day I saw anything.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it was one of the best decisions, I think, of my life. But
Yeah.
I really went in pretty blind.
Like, where are all the boys at?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I didn't really want to go to Barnard, honestly. I was like, I really wanted boys, but there were, we were in the city, so it was like, there
Yeah.
will be boys
You're
around.
Columbia adjacent, so you're
Yeah, exactly.
so you're in New York, and did you know, when did the writing thing come? Did you know you wanted to write, or what were you studying?
No, certainly not. I was studying Italian,
Okay.
Oh, wow.
which might be the only thing that's like less practical than writing. I did a gap, and so I did a 5th year of high school in Italy. And I just kind of fell in love with Italy and the language. And I came back, and I didn't know what to do with my life. And I just thought, hey, like I'm gonna study Italian. And so I did. And so while I was doing that, Barnard has a really good writing program.
Hmm.
There's a teacher there named Mary Gordon who she just retired, but she was running kind of like the hardest to get into workshop. And I applied, and she rejected me, and she just kept rejecting me. And I was like, okay, what can I do? And then I realized that across the street, you actually didn't have to apply at Columbia. You could just enroll. And so I started there,
Through the back
actually.
door.
Exactly. And so I started taking a class there, and I started writing a story that eventually Mary accepted. And she let me into her class, and I just kept taking it until I graduated. And by the time I graduated, I had like 50 pages of this story. And Mary and I had become pretty close. And she basically said to me at the end of graduation, she was like, I think you have a novel here. If you think you can do it, I encourage you to do it. And like, I was an Italian major. I didn't have any job prospects.
Not a lot of options.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, this sounds pretty good. So yeah, so it was like another 4 years.
Yeah.
And I just worked a lot of random jobs.
Right, right. That's a cool story.
Yeah.
So that leads us to July 5th of this year, when you release your 3rd book, Kaleidoscope. And it has been picked by Today.com as one of the 30 books you should read this summer, as well as BuzzFeed and Yahoo and Apple Books all picked you as a July pick. Cecily, do you mind giving us a quick summary of the book? No spoilers, but a quick summary of the book before we talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So Kaleidoscope it's the story of this this family. They're the Brightons. They're a biracial Chinese American family, and the story opens in Eugene, Oregon, where I'm from, and they opened the town's first organic grocery store, and they kind of have these humble beginnings, and as they start making a little money, they start going on these package tours to Asia, and on this package tour to India, they sparked this idea to open a store that basically sources luxury goods from around the world, first from India, but then later from Asia, from Mexico, from other parts of the world. And it's led primarily by their oldest daughter, Morgan. She is she's the older sister. There's two sisters, Morgan and Riley, and Morgan is the designer. She's the beautiful one, and she's always in the spotlight. And then there's her younger sister, Riley, who's always kind of in her shadow. She's kind of the brainier one, the more socially awkward one. And so the four of them, their family builds Kaleidoscope, this store, and it blows up. It takes them to New York, and they're kind of shoved under the limelight and forced to kind of own this like huge store that they've created. And then there's an accident that I won't give away, and it kind of sends the family into kind of a chaotic tailspin. And the rest of the book follows the family as they kind of grapple with what they're supposed to do with their lives. And then, there's a lot of travel. There's a lot of food. It's a book about ambition, about family, about sisterhood.
Very cool. Emily, what do you think? Yeah, what are your initial thoughts on this book before we get into spoilers? What do you want to tell people to get them to read this book?
Yeah, I thoroughly really enjoyed this book. The writing, like on a sentence level, was great. I loved how the sentences were constructed and just how like the sentences were built to like maintain this level of urgency throughout the whole narrative. And then the structure, I'm like a big structure person when I'm reading. So like I really like the play on structure and like the different point of views. And like with the descriptions of food and places, they were just so vibrant and so descriptive. And I like felt like I was there too.
Thank you so much. I love that you're a structured nerd. I'm the same way. My favorite books have wacky structures. You don't know where they're going. They go a different direction. You're reading a different book by the end than you thought you were reading in the beginning. I love that.
Yeah. Not bad for an Italian major.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I had to learn that on my own.
No, I really liked it too. And for me, it was about family. For me, it was about the relationships and the way they change, even though that, well, it's a kaleidoscope, right? You think you see one thing, and then by the end, it's something totally different. Yeah. So everyone out there should get a copy of this book. It's available everywhere, but go to your local bookstore. You have a favorite local bookstore in Eugene or Portland?
I mean, that's a hard question to ask in Portland, just because Powell's is it's hard.
It's the elephant
hard
in the
not
room,
to choose Powell's. Exactly.
Yeah,
but there are a lot of really cool other books. There's Broadway books and Annie Bloom's. There are a lot of really cool bookstores here, but Powell's is really phenomenal in terms. I've never seen so many people like so hyped about books in one place.
No, if you're ever in the Pacific Northwest, it's a very reading culture, and you go to Powell's like a mecca. And I went in there, and my wife was at like Nordstrom Rack or something, and I say I'm good, and I was in there easily 4 hours, 5 hours. You can spend a day. Oh yeah, more than one day.
Yeah, no, there are like, I'd say half the rooms I haven't been in yet.
Yeah, it is that big. Yeah, so anyone who's never been to Powell's Books in Portland, definitely go. And no sales tax. So
nice.
You look at the back of the book; it says $9.99. You're going to pay $9.99 for that.
I always forget that. It is. It's amazing.
It's so great. Yeah.
Yeah.
You go to the dollar store in Oregon and you get 10 items. It's $10. It's the best.
I'm going to be so upset when I'm in Seattle next week.
Yeah, no, don't buy anything. Buy a house in Washington because there's no property tax. But then buy all your goods in Oregon. Yeah.
I've set up my life entirely wrong.
You're doing the opposite. Yeah. And never come to California. If you don't like taxes, don't come to California. Ever. So everyone out there, get a copy of this book. It is super fun. I took a chance because your publicist offered to. She was like, "Oh, you want to interview Cecily Wong? She wrote this book," and I was like, I said, "Sure." But I was like, what if this book is awful? What if we hate this book?
You never know.
You never know. And I hadn't read it. And I was like, sure, we're always looking for content. But I was like, oh, I hope this book is good. But you came through. The book was super fun.
So happy to hear it. You can almost retract the offer, I feel like.
It would have been a very short interview. It's like, so the cover art. Cover art is great. Love it.
A lot of words in that book.
Yeah. But no, seriously. We recommend it to everyone. It is Emily, we're going to start doing this now. It's our August pick for the InfatuAsian podcast. We're doing a book a month, I guess. That's what we do. But so before we get into spoilers, we typically play a song to let people know that we're about to spoil this book. So I looked at, you have a neat little playlist on Twitter. I do a little research. So I went on Twitter and I found this little playlist. Do you have a song off that? I picked one, but do you have a song off that playlist?
The one you picked is the one you should play.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a
jam. Yeah, had you heard that before?
No, you introduced me to it.
I got to tell my husband because he's going to be so happy about that. He found that song.
Okay, so we're going to play a little bit of V Mahi by Arjit Singh and Asis Kaur. There's other people on it as well. But yeah, so enjoy this for a few seconds. And when the song is over, if you don't want to hear any spoilers, go get a copy of this book and read it before you listen to us. All right, we'll be back on the other side. So, Cecily, I'm always nervous about asking authors to read a passage just because it's kind of like, if you're the voice of Yoda or whatever, you're always asked to do the same thing over and over. I don't want to make you do like a monkey and do a trick or anything. Do you mind reading a passage or?
Yeah, no, I don't mind. I picked like a paragraph. It'll be like really short. I figured that's the way to go.
Perfect. Yeah.
Should I just read? Do you want any kind of setup or?
Yeah, maybe a little setup.
Okay, so I'm going to read a little section about the two sisters, Morgan and Riley. This is from their childhood. They've just moved from Hawaii to Oregon, and Morgan's 2 years older, but she's just begun this growth spurt, this puberty that's kind of taken everyone by surprise. And they're in a new place, and this is from Riley's point of view. It's difficult to explain Morgan's puberty, how it changed practically everything, but perhaps it's easy. One day my sister was small, straw-haired and scrawny, and then one summer she was 3 inches taller than me. The summer after 6 inches taller, one of us bleeding from the vagina and one of us not. Over 2 summers, I watched my sister expand into a creature I barely recognized. First spindly and big-footed, with eyes that took up too much of her face, then womanly, her lankiness rounding into hips and ass, her nipples swelling from actual breasts. Then suddenly she was 13, 5'8", with bee-stung lips and hair the color of wet sand and lightning. And I was 11 with a face that made my classmates pull their eyes at me. It forced our lives startlingly off kilter. Since coming to Oregon, Morgan and I were the half-Asian sisters with the Chinese mom who ran the organic grocery store, the big white dad who walked the aisles opening bags of seaweed strips and offering them around. We wore secondhand clothes, had no friends but each other, ate dinner sitting on buckets in the walk-in. But Morgan's puberty dug us from our cave of obscurity. Boys were suddenly in the store, feigning interest in my mom's roast chickens. Girls from school came and brought their parents, asked Morgan what she was doing on Friday. Morgan's looks put our little slice of the world on display. Organic's more interesting because of her. I remember watching my sister at the cash register, her long trim legs and heart-shaped butt, the smooth curve of her shoulder blades, getting ready for my turn to row. Up until that point, there was very little terrain that separated us, very few experiences we weren't forced to share. For a time, I got such a thrill from looking at Morgan because that's where I was headed soon. And I still remember how long it took me, how much it fucked with me, to realize that height and beauty was not a stage that eventually befell us all.
Do you have a sister?
I do.
Oh, older or younger?
Yeah. Younger. I am the older sister.
You're the older one.
I am the older one.
Yeah, I have two girls, and one of them's 12 and one of them's 10. So they're right at that stage right now
Yeah.
where one of them's growing up and she asked me about makeup she asked my wife about makeup the other day, and my younger one just wants to play, wants to play games, and they're
Yeah, no,
at
it's
that stage.
a crazy like invisible leap that happens at that age, and
Yeah.
especially you don't know what you're going to become physically.
Yeah, yeah. But for the younger one, I love that. She's like, okay, well, that's the roadmap.
Yeah, cool. I'm next.
Yeah, we're looking at it. Who do you want to talk about first? Should we talk about Morgan first or Riley first?
Dealer's choice.
Oh, okay. Emily, your choice. So.
We could start with Riley.
Okay, let's start with Riley. So yeah, these are Hapa sisters. What made you want to make them Hapa as opposed to either full Asian, full white?
Yeah, sure. There were a few reasons. So the first reason was that I wanted them to be really physically different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by making them half Chinese, half white, there was just kind of more room for me to play with that. Morgan's like really tall and fair, and looks extremely mixed and kind of like racially ambiguous. And then Riley's kind of more classically Asian. She's, shorter and darker and just reads Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was that reason, and I wanted them to have different experiences in the world based on how they looked. But I also, when I was playing with the concept of Kaleidoscope and this store that sells international goods, I was thinking about who would be allowed to open the store,
Mm-hmm.
and like who we would trust as like an authority figure, like a spokesperson of like international living. And I thought, it's a mixed race family, but it's also kind of silly because,
it's like, Chinese.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, exactly. Like, but at a certain point, I feel like it almost doesn't matter, like they're just kind of this like mixed race family.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Living the international lifestyle.
Yeah.
So yeah, for that reason, I wanted them to be mixed.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't color the whole experience that they have, but there are times when they're kind of othered, or they don't totally fit in, or the scene on the train where Riley's riding there and they're all asking James, all the locals are asking James questions because he's super just the Caucasian guy, he's the white guy on the train, and she just kind of blends in, she kind of lays a little low, and she's able to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge part of Riley's journey is, she starts in Oregon, as I did, kind of like really sticking out with classmates who like really, really see her as Asian.
Yeah.
And then she moves to New York, where she becomes a little less defined by her Asianness around her classmates and like in a city that has more diversity. And then she gets out to Asia, where she just keeps getting mistaken as a local. And I think that was something I craved as a person too. Just to, be kind of like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know that. I know that feeling. When I went to China the first time, I was like, hey, I can walk around with impunity. No one, no one knows.
Exactly. Exactly. No one's looking at me differently.
Yeah. Yeah. At the very beginning, when you were writing her, was she always going to be a Barnard woman? Or
I think so. She started life as a Barnard woman, and that was stuck to her. The Barnard women are very specific, and Riley's kind of one of them. They're like really, like kind of ambitious and opinionated, and often kind of like little socially awkward, and they usually are. They end up doing like they're like laser focused and end up doing something kind of intense, and so she has a bit of that, definitely.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So part of the charm of this book is that you see it through Riley's eyes, and then you realize that she's had a lot of it wrong. Like when she sees, growing up, and she sees her older sister and idolizes her and puts her on a pedestal, and then even, her parents and their work partner, just the way that she sees all these people just changes throughout the book. Is that kind of how you started with the idea for this book? Was that it was going to be through this young 21-year-old's eyes that she was seeing people and what they perceived?
It's definitely not how this started. But thanks for that question. I mean, it's one of like it became one of my largest preoccupations while writing this book was this was perspective and vantage and how things change as time passes and depending on who's looking. And the way I came to this is because I started this book because I was trying to kind of get down these big important memories that I felt that I'd experienced in my 20s. I started this book in my 20s. And I was writing them almost like a journal entry. Yeah. And then I got older and I kept writing this book, and books take a long time. And so years passed and I'd revisit these scenes and I'd be like, this is not how I feel about them anymore. This is embarrassing. And instead of, I went in to edit it and I would have to edit it every year, to kind of account for, my perspective change, what had happened to me since. And I think what I realized is that, what was interesting about this was how knowledge accumulates and how it changes your perspective. And that these memories do kind of live like in crystalline ways, but we still see them kind of differently depending on what's happened around them, what we've learned since then. And so that's when I had the title Kaleidoscope forever. The store was called Kaleidoscope from the beginning. And it wasn't until years later where I was like, oh my God, like I got it. The whole book is a kaleidoscope. And that's how I formed the structure was modeled after a kaleidoscope.
Yeah. Was it hard keeping track of that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure. It was the structure was kind of like both natural and just difficult. I mean, as as someone who's like interested in form, it just, you move something and the weight shifts entirely. It just doesn't work anymore. And so it was like a kind of a tightrope situation, like trying to figure out where should, what gets revealed at what point, it cuts back and forth in time. And I feel like this is like both my strength and my downfall, is that I'm always trying to do that. Some people like it and some people don't, but I mean, once I got the general bones of it, I kind of had to stick with it and anything that didn't fit within this, because there is, there's a balance to how to make it feel that way.
Yeah. I had to reread some stuff. Like, when I got to the end, I was like, wait, wasn't Morgan this? And then you go back, did I read it wrong? But you go back and you realize that like Morgan she doesn't say a whole lot in this book, but she's described through other people's eyes so much that you don't realize whose perspective are we looking through? Who is the real Morgan? We don't even know. So it was one of those ones where I got to the end. I was like, I think I need to reread.
I love that.
If only I had to pay twice, or I had to pay again to read it.
Exactly. You didn't pay twice?
Nope. I didn't even pay once.
Seems fair.
So let's talk about Morgan. Morgan, the perfect Morgan who has no flaws. She's older by 2 years. Fashion designer. Well, she had a fashion sense when she was in high school. Yeah, so she was very stylish all through high school, I'd imagine.
Yeah, so she kind of developed an eye for fashion because she had this miraculous puberty that just shot her up like 6 inches. She had to relearn her body. They didn't have any money at this point, and so she learned to sew. And she would go to Goodwill and she would, cut things up and make things fit her. And along the way, she got like pretty good at this. And so when they were kind of messing around with this idea of opening Kaleidoscope, Morgan was the one who kind of stepped in with the vision. I don't think this business would work without her.
No way.
At all. Yeah. And so she becomes the designer. She follows her sister Riley to New York. When she goes to Barnard, she wants to go to Parsons School of Design. And I mean, she's on the surface kind of this like really like attractive and talented person. And then as the story goes on, you see some different sides of her, but she gave me a lot of trouble as a character. It's hard to write a perfect person. They're really boring. No one wants to read a perfect person.
Yeah. But she's such a good sister too, like she's and Riley just falls apart when she goes to New York. It's really well done, where you can just in your bones you know how much Riley depends on Morgan. Like you wrote that so well, that Morgan to her was just like a goddess. Yeah, she was her life. Yeah, she was.
Well, I love that you have two daughters who are 2 years apart. This just makes it all the more resonant and scary.
It hit. Yeah, no, it definitely hit. Though my girls don't get along that well.
Yeah, but that could be later. I feel like that is the ebb and flow of sisterhood.
There is that idolization, you know, where I have an older sister. She's 2 years older, and we're very different. But yeah, she was flawless in a lot of ways. You know, like just she was so cool, and she did. You know, she introduced me to music. She introduced me to cool stuff or cool friends. You know, and I felt that a little, where you know Riley's tagging along with Morgan here and there, and you know boys are talking to Riley about Morgan, you know, stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I got a little of that in high school, you know, and it just as you go along, you chip away at that a little bit with Morgan. Like you're chipping away a little bit. She's not as perfect as you thought she was, and it's really. It's not a fall from grace, but it's just I liked her more. You know, she's more human. The first half of the book, she's so perfect that
for sure
you
it's
find
hard
no
to see
flaw
her
in
as a character. Yeah. I mean, that was something that I was interested in playing with too. I feel like as this book's been out in the world and I've been talking to readers, like everyone seems to know a Morgan, you know, from school, or you know, either they have a sister or it's just, you know, some like seemingly perfect girl that they grew up with and kind of idolized, and it's hard to get close to that person, you know, and it's hard to kind of even imagine that they have demons of their own, or what it's like to kind of be on that pedestal for everyone, because of the way you look. My mom pulled up the Morgan of her life from like middle school, first and last name. I was like, this is amazing.
I bet we could all pull up a Morgan, someone that, you know, could do no wrong. Yeah. There's some other characters here. Let's see. Emily, you want to discuss any of these other
we've got
characters?
James, who they went to high school with and who ended up at Columbia. And then their parents, Karen, their mom, and Hank. And then we have, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. Is it Hammer or
Hamir?
Okay.
Hamir, yeah.
Hamir.
Cecily, you want to describe Hamir for us?
Yeah, sure. So Hamir is kind of like our international man of mystery. He is he's a very wealthy, handsome Indian man who's also royal. And he meets the Brightons on this package tour. When they come to India, they visit a shop, they hit it off, and he kind of becomes like a patron for them. He's got all the connections. He just takes a liking to them, and he kind of represents. So I spent some time in India traveling, and he represents this person who I actually was very surprised that I just kept meeting, which was this very like suave and wealthy Indian guy,
middle-aged guy.
Yeah, well, I don't know, young, middle-aged, like I was just, you know, the narrative I feel like coming from America and the West is that like, you know, India is like incredibly poor, and we help them, and you know, like India is incredibly poor, like that is true, but there's also this flip side where there's these huge, you know, like illustrious families that
generational
have
wealth,
generational wealth, and you know their families have been in these positions of power forever. And we met a number of people who came from these families, and I thought it was interesting to kind of flip the script and have this like extremely charming, wealthy Indian man help out these kind of bumbling Americans,
suburban.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I want to talk about Karen for a second. You know, there's times when I forgot that she was Chinese, but then there's times when I was reading it and I was like, man, that's a Chinese mom.
That's so funny. I love that you say that. Tell me more.
See, I don't want to get stereotypical. Well, I am, but there's times when she would say something and it's kind of about them, but it's really about her. You know,
Oh yeah,
the woe is me.
absolutely.
I did. Yeah, there's an Asian mom in all of our lives. That
Absolutely.
yeah. And
it's that Asian mom spin. I love that you recognize that. Yes.
yeah, where it's like, well, I had to do this because of you. So yeah, she's very cool. I liked her. So we'll get a little more into the characters and talk about the plot. But yeah, really well done with the characters. But let's talk about Kaleidoscope, the store. Did you base that on anything that you knew or that you'd seen?
Of course. Yeah, I mean it's based, of course, on stores that we have here in the States. Anthropology, World
Pier
Market,
1.
Home Goods, exactly.
Yeah.
These stores that are kind of curating this selection of stuff that has like an international feel.
Pearl River?
The Pearl River Mart?
Yeah, Pearl River Mart in New York City. Of course, right?
It closed.
I think they're back. I think they came back.
Oh, are they?
Oh, I did a little research. I think they relocated, yeah.
Oh, that's good to know. I didn't know that, actually.
I think. Okay, I better fact check myself on this.
You can edit that out.
But that store, that was kind of, the commodification.
Totally. And there's something, I just found it so interesting because I'm drawn to this stuff. Like, I think it's cool. And yet, like, we don't think about, how weird it is that we're like, check out this bird cage from India. You should put it in your house.
Yeah.
Like, why? I don't have a bird. Like, it's decorative.
Right.
Like, it's just it becomes like these status symbols that like you have like global taste in things.
Yeah. Well, that went back to like the 1800s. Charles Darwin's bringing back fossils, and everyone wants a fossil in their house at that time. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's always some person claiming to have discovered something and like bringing it to the people,
the good people of Eugene.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So this company, it starts in Eugene in their organic supermarket that the Brightons had been running fairly successfully, but then they get this bug that they're going to bring all this Indian wares and clothing, and so this Hamir is a big part of this. He's the supplier basically, and so they have this years-long relationship, and it's Morgan who's doing a lot of the designing as well as picking the cloth and things like that. So this small little company blows up, and they end up moving the whole family to New York. And then we find out that Morgan's kind of running the show. Like, she's so, like, Karen calls her the glue of not just the family, but of this business, and everything revolves around Morgan. And then you kill her.
I killed her.
Cecily, why?
I know.
Why are you killing this perfect girl? Why you got to do that to her?
My mom was like, what? Like, why did she was like,
what just happened?
You're going to bring her back to life. It's like, it's not that kind of book, Mom.
Yeah. Out of nowhere. We're having this beautiful day, like Riley's perfect day, her birthday, and you kill her.
Did it come as a surprise to you too? A little bit. Or did you feel it coming?
I didn't read anything about it. Yeah, no, it surprised me. Yeah, cool.
It surprised me a little bit. It happened so quickly, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, some of my favorite death scenes in fiction are when they just happen. You know, like, and it's like it happens like at the end of a sentence.
And you're like, what?
Exactly.
You gotta read it 5 times. Yeah, no, I didn't see it coming. I was like, where is this going? They're just like, what's happening? And then it's like, oh, this is a different book. I'm reading a totally different book now. Did you think about I looked it up. There was a crane incident in 2008 in New York. Did you have that in the back of your head, or?
I mean, that's where I got it.
Okay.
It is, yeah. I mean, I did a lot of research on how to die in New York. And I wanted it to be like a extremely New York death. I wanted it to be kind of something that
very fluky.
Yeah. I wanted you to be able to kind of blame New York a little bit, which helped.
Karen does.
Exactly. And like the whole family kind of does, because they're, this isn't their home. They kind of uprooted their life to come here. I wanted to kind of blur that, like where the guilt was, because, it's obviously not Riley's fault, but it's also, you allow those things to creep into your mind.
Like if she didn't come.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this it just ruins everything. Like, it's kind of like, oh, how dare she do this to us? But yeah, the company's in shambles. The parents, that Hank becomes an alcoholic. Maybe he was already, but he's definitely a raging alcoholic now.
For sure.
Karen's a mess, and Riley's in bed 14 hours a day. And so James and Riley find comfort in each other. They go on this journey, and it's kind of soul searching. And it was meant to be Morgan and Riley doing this trip together after college. And so they're backpacking around the world. They start in India because I guess Riley had a little experience with India. And have you traveled on the train in India much yourself? Because you described it very vividly.
So my now husband Reed and I, when we were in our 20s, it was 2014, we took a 9-month backpacking trip. And I just, I needed to get it into a novel somehow. But yeah, I mean, part of it, one of the most memorable things we did on that trip was to take this overnight train from Goa to Mumbai, and we did take sleeper class and
did everyone advise you not to do this?
Yes, absolutely.
And you're like, how bad could it be?
Yeah, I mean, the ticket was like $3. It was, it was just, we had to wait for a while because it was like hard to get even a ticket in this last class. And what was kind of wild is that we'd met this family right before, and they invited us over for dinner, and they just like stuffed us full of food right before we got on this train. Like we had this elaborate, huge meal, and then they dropped us off on the train, and we were so full, and we're like, oh God,
it's gotta come out.
Exactly. And so we were just like, it was just like the most, it was an awful setup, which is, how that train scene devolves. But yes, that was very much pulled from real life. Is this
Reed's line? I think I now know what Satan's butthole smells like.
Yeah, it actually is. And I'm going to tell him that you enjoyed that line.
I enjoyed it so much. Yes.
Do I put this in?
It's so perfect though, because this is in the 90s, so China was a lot different back then. I was in the China taking hard sleeper class, taking the train, and I had to take a dump as well. And I got to the car, which was in between, the little toilet was in between the two cars, and there was sloshing, and I just tightened up. For a day, and I couldn't do it, so I just held it for a day and a half.
Good for you.
Yeah, no, it was not easy, but oh man,
I could not. When Reed read this scene, he was like, "Great, everyone's gonna know you pooped on a moving Indian train."
But like, what else you gotta do? But yeah, that was very vivid. Loved it. So I don't even know how we're gonna wrap up this interview here, but let's talk about the ending. So things happen on this trip. It's really vivid. It's really well written. But let's get to the ending. So there's a few more plot twists. I don't want to ruin everything. So even if you've listened this far, I don't want to ruin the ending for you. But Emily, what do you think? What did you think of the ending? Were you satisfied?
Yeah, I was totally satisfied with it. Honestly, it was left open-ended enough where like there wasn't really any mystery to what was going to happen next, but like still a little bit. So I was totally satisfied with the ending.
Did you struggle with how much to tie a bow around it, or were you going to leave it more or less as hard, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I think endings are the hardest for me. And I struggled a lot with my first novel ending it. And I think that was probably the major complaint that I got from my first novel, is that it ended too neatly. So it's like, this one, I'm going to nail messy. The ending. Exactly. Yeah. Like I'm going to keep it messy. But I tried to end it. I tried to end it a bunch of times before the end. I tried to end it at the end of the trip. I tried to end it, but I knew that they had to go back to New York. I knew that they had to, face the family and kind of show what happens after that ride. But once I wrote it, I didn't rewrite it. Like it came.
No, it worked for me. It was good enough. It was enough wrapping of it, but not so perfect. Yeah, because life isn't perfect, right?
It is not.
It's never going to be back to the way it was. We're going to end, as we usually do, with what we call the lightning round. So don't worry about these answers. Just whatever comes to your head, go with it. So purely hypothetical. If this is probably a true story, but if you had it to do it again, if you're 21 years old and have 30 grand in your pocket and you wanted to disappear for 9 months, give me how many spots? Give me 3 spots that you would hit. You definitely would hit if you had 30 grand and you're 21 years old trying to escape from the world.
If I'm 21, I mean, I'm going to places in the book. I mean, I'm going to India, I'm going to Thailand, probably going to Vietnam. I mean, I'm going to where the other lost youths are, you know. I'm going to where the other people who are around my age are going to have fun and, you know, quote unquote, find themselves.
Yeah. See, I'd probably go to Seoul and spend 30 grand in 2 weeks and have to come home.
There you go. You said you had to make it last 9 months. So you have to go someplace cheaper.
I know. Yeah. No. How about you, Emily? Where would you go?
Maybe Italy. I had a fun time in Italy, and I would just spend probably like 2-3 weeks drinking wine, eating pasta and pizza.
Yeah. 30 grand worth of wine, pizza, and pasta. Can't go wrong.
A good choice.
Yeah. You know what? India's not on my list yet. I have a lot of other places I got to go first, but would you?
It's a young person's game.
Okay.
I mean, it's, you know, I'm glad I went when I went because I'm not sure I'll ever make it back.
Yeah, or you got to go Hamir style. You got to go 5-star.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you have a disastrous travel story? I mean, other than the train to Mumbai, do you have a disastrous travel story or maybe a toilet trauma story that you could share with us that's not in the book?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so many things have gone wrong while traveling. I feel like, and I mean, I'm sorry to say that a lot of them have made it into the book. I had to, you know, share a lot of them. The scene where they arrive in Goa and all the taxi drivers are on strike, and so they borrow. That is a true story. Or it's, you know, based on a true story where basically no one could get anywhere because the taxis were on strike, and my husband convinced this random man to let us borrow his car for 3 days. And we did, and he had to drive, you know, stick with the wrong hand, and we're driving, you know, there's just the whole thing was just kind of like manic, but it was, we got there and we just like did a handshake agreement. This guy just like helped us. And
see, I was calling BS on that story. I was like, there's no way that this would ever happen.
It was wild. We really thought we really tried to like figure out how we were being scammed, like what could go wrong.
I was waiting for it to go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that's the amazing thing about Goa is that everyone is just extremely kind and they're just really trying to help you. It's like, this is a great place. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we end each show by elevating a member of our community by asking our guests to pick an infatuation. An infatuation is anyone in the Asian community that you admire or that has inspired you, living or deceased. Who is your infatuation?
I love this question. And it was really hard actually to pick one. And I'm going to choose Aquafina. I love Aquafina. I don't know. She's doing this like really cool thing that I admire where she's kind of got one foot in like, you know, her like Chinese world, and then she's got one foot into her like Chinese American like you know, modern actress pop star world. And I think she does both things really well, and she's funny. I love the tone of her voice. I would love to write something for her one day, but I'm a big Aquafina fan.
Yeah, no, she and she's got range, you know, she's done serious, heartfelt, just goofy off the wall.
Exactly.
You know, musician. Like she's really cool. We did a episode, I don't know if you saw, we did an episode where we drafted, you know, like fantasy football draft. We picked our top 6 Asian actors.
I love it.
In turn. Yeah, I got Aquafina. Super happy about that.
Oh, you got Aquafina. Okay,
yeah,
good. I'm talking to a fellow fan.
I got Bruce Lee, then Tony Leung from Hong Kong, and I got Aquafina.
Wow. That's a good team.
Good team, right? Yeah. So I want to see. Yeah, no, for sure. No, she's great. Yeah, we love Nora Lum. Thank you so much for coming along, Cecily. This about does it for episode 44.
Thank you so much for having me. This was delightful. Thank you both for reading so generously and for having me here.
Oh, totally our pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to your work. Any more that's coming out.
Thank you.
What's on tap? You got something rattling around in your brain?
Not really. I got a baby.
Yeah.
And yeah, hopefully I'll be back to writing soon, but I'm going to give myself a little breather.
Yeah. Well, if you write a book about a Chinese American biology teacher in San Francisco, let me know.
I know who to ask. Yeah. Actually, that is what's next.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I got stories. I got tons of stories for you. But yeah. So once again, everyone get a copy of Cecily's book. If you want to follow her on Instagram, it is at Hello Cecily Wong. And her website is cecilywong.com. Yeah. And don't forget to check out Emily's website at emilyhuang.com. I'll write that out for you. There's a there's a dash in there. So you can read Emily's work. And thank you again for hosting, Emily.
Yeah, thank you.
Cecily came up with a new title for you. You're, what did you call her? Literary concierge?
You're the book concierge.
Book concierge for the InfatuAsian podcast.
Love it. Love the title.
Yeah, you're stuck now, Emily. You got to read all these books that I pick for you. But hey, everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. We hope you learned something. As I always mention, you can write to us at infatuasionpodcast@gmail.com. And please follow us on Instagram or Facebook at The InfatuAsian Podcast. Until we talk to you again, on behalf of Cecily, Emily, and myself, we hope that you are all happy, healthy, and safe out there. Until we talk again, bye.
Bye.